Welcome to the MC Universe. We are the Lorehounds, your guides to the multiverse and beyond. I'm David.
I'm Jean.
And I'm Elysia, and we're here to recap Episode 6, the series finale of Marvel's Secret Invasion on Disney+, titled Home.
We'll take you through the episode scene by scene, pointing out things you might have missed in our thoughts and questions.
And stay tuned to the end of the show for Comics Corner, where Jean will get into the comic book comparisons. We'll also get some thoughts and theories from our community.
Speaking of feedback, we'd love to hear your thoughts about Secret Invasion as a whole for our wrap-up podcast. Email your feedback to mcu@thelorehounds.com or head over to our website, thelorehounds.com, and use the contact form or record us a voicemail.
For ad-free versions of this and all of our podcasts, check us out at patreon.com/thelorehounds. We're just completing our 1-year anniversary month, and if you hear this before the end of July 2023, you could still get a sticker if you sign up. We custom produced a thank you sticker for all of our patrons, and anyone who's subscribed at the end of July, that means July 31st at 11:59 and 59 seconds, you too can get one of these. I'll have some more information about that at the end of the podcast. Also, I'll have some programming notes about our schedule and our affiliate schedule as we go into August, so that'll all be at the tail end here.
We'd also be forever grateful if you could help us get more ears tuned into the Lorehounds MC Universe. All you need to do is drop us a 5-star rating and review wherever you're listening. Apple Podcasts is especially helpful, even if it's just a few quick words. We read all the reviews and they mean a lot to us.
And before we get started, just a quick spoiler warning. We'll of course be spoiling the entire Secret Invasion series, but spoilers from the rest of the MCU and the Marvel Comics are also on the table.
And finally, we'd like to note that we are not WGA or SAG-AFTRA members, but we do support them in their strike for better pay and working conditions.
We do not and will not accept money from any of the struck studios to promote their work.
We're just here to talk about the creative work that goes into these projects and why quality creative work is so important to our enjoyment as an audience.
Okay, let's get into our episode 6 entitled Home. So, Elysia, can you tell us a little bit about the episode?
Yeah, so this episode's called Home, home in your own skin. I guess that's been the theme of the whole series.
Enough.
And it was directed again by Elysia, like the entire series. And the writers this time, well, we had Brian Tucker back, my favorite, the one who's writing every app. But this time he was joined by Kyle Bradstreet, he's a showrunner of this show, but he was especially known for Mr. Robot before this, which is a show I really love.
Loved Mr. Robot.
Yeah, and he also co-wrote the pilot, which... yeah, we'll get into it, but these are my two favorite episodes, the pilot and the finale of this show. Low bar, but there it is. So,
well, why don't you keep rolling here and let us know what you made of this final episode of this series run.
Yeah, I mean, I think I wasn't as disappointed as a lot of other people, but I think that's because I had already given up on the show before this. So I came in and I was like, yeah, okay, that's kind of what I expected. And, they definitely didn't give me any more than I expected, maybe a little bit less, but I just kind of experienced it with a shrug. And I'm more interested in thinking about the implications going forward than dwelling on all the things I didn't like about this show, because we've talked a lot about it.
Right. And we were talking off air just before we got on about this difference between negativity and criticism.
Yeah.
And wanting to be critical and examine, because that's the part of the fun we have, right, is taking things apart. But then also being on air and being negative, and we're trying to separate those two things. And yeah, I can appreciate the fact that at some point you just kind of check out and you're like, okay, this is the show. It is what it is. What do we do with it?
But we do have to have some real talk about how iodide is used to protect against radiation. So, okay. I mean, I have to lob a few last complaints.
True. But I was really interested watching the final fight scene to know which different powers that we were seeing Gaia and Gravik display, because there was a lot there. Yeah. So yeah, there's huge, like you say, there are huge implications going forward.
Yeah. And I don't hate the idea of getting an OP Gaia. I know some people are like, what the hell? But yeah, I'm very curious about how that's going to work out. I know there's a lot of people out there wanting a Scarlet Witch fight now, which would be kind of cool. So
Interesting. Jean, Scarlet Witch fight, or what else did you think about this episode?
Yeah, I want to know if Gaia is now the most powerful being in the MCU outside of, the cosmic powers like the Celestials and things of that nature. Yeah, the thing is, I never want to be that guy, that person, but having read the comics over and over and over again, they just did a better job telling this story.
Sure.
And I can't help but, as I watched this series, I couldn't help but think about all the moments in the comic books that I really loved, and that the series didn't really give me a lot of those moments. Mm-hmm. Right. So I think that's where I'm stuck at. There were some great plot points in the series overall, and in this episode as well. I love Vara reclaiming her name. I didn't need to. The scene with her and Nick kissing at the end was like, yeah.
You get feelings.
Walking over into the light. I didn't get feels. I was just like.
I meant about the show overall.
Right. I'm like, I'm supposed to feel something about this moment, but I didn't. Right.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Ritson going over to the dark side. I really didn't see that happening because we really didn't get much of Ritson. We don't know his personality. We don't know what type of person he is, so him making that speech at the end was just, to me, a bit like, okay, where did that come from? So there were things that bothered me, and there were things that I liked. The fight scene, we all, I knew it was Gaia, walking in there, because there's no way Nick would have survived. You know what I mean? And Gravik thinking that, Elysia said, we're going to have a talk about how you protect yourself from radiation. Like, why would he believe that's how it works? So there are things that I liked, there are things that I didn't like, and that's for the series as a whole. But we'll get more into the episode as we go on. And one more thing. The guy with the sling, why is he still on duty?
Yeah.
Can we get to the bottom of this? We need like a Senate investigation. We need like a select committee. There has to be somebody investigating the Secret Service. Why is this guy still on duty? Why is he giving the president his gun?
Yeah.
What is going on here? What is happening?
Right.
What is happening? So, yeah.
Yeah, I think my estimation is that I was really disappointed and let down by this episode. Mm-hmm. It really felt that they took a bunch of tropey concepts, they grabbed a bunch of thoughts about their IP and the draft. I don't know, it just felt like a really confused, jumbled up script. The stuff between Vera and Nick, I thought that they were done in their relationship, but then they weren't. And it was a really quick turn. There was just a lot of confusing stuff, and it just kind of, I don't know. I don't want to be over dramatic about my emotions about this. I think the thing that disappointed me the most was that you have an amazing cast.
Yeah.
You have some real power hitters in here, and
they did what they could with what they got.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But if you're going to roll out that kind of star power into a show like this, that's going to then leave us where we are, with Gaia potentially being the most powerful being in the universe, the most powerful non-cosmic being. Right. That has huge implications. Rhodey being a Skrull since when? That is huge implications. And it didn't feel to me that, like, the powers that be, the MCU Time Lords, or, whatever, however they're managing that, the what's the Loki, the Time Control Authority?
Yeah, the TVA. The
TVA, the time, like whatever that version of the TVA is for Marvel. It doesn't feel like they gave the show the care and the consideration that it needed relative to A, who you're bringing in to play these characters, and B, what you're leaving us with at the end of this in terms of what does this mean for the MCU going forward, the storyline going forward. There are serious implications that go backwards and forwards. And in a comic book, and as I understand it, I've never read the comics for this series, but this was a really wild series because it touched everything that had come before, and who was a Skrull and when were they a Skrull and all of this kind of stuff. You can do something differently in that medium than this, but now with the TV and the movie series, there's a whole we have to retroactively look at. Wait a minute, Rhodey was a Skrull for how long? And then now that we have Gaia, what does that mean? Especially for for the Marvels coming up. It was just a very confusing episode for me in that regard. And I didn't think, I was hoping that they would maintain, because at the beginning of the season, the first handful of episodes, they were fine. They weren't great. Mm-hmm. They weren't terrible. They were fine. And they actually got worse, I think, towards the end. Yeah. They just got jumbled and confused and no clarity to the story. And that's, again, disappointing. It's really disappointing.
I think for me, it was that, I just kept, at first, I was like, well, the next episode is going to fix things. And then, every time that didn't happen, that's why for me, it felt like it got more and more disappointing because I just gave up more and more until I gave up completely. I gave away all of my fucks. And now this finale was what I expected. I can't say better than that. But maybe season 2 of Loki will start with a scene where the TVA shows up and prunes this timeline and gives us everyone the show took from us back.
Nice. What nice. Yeah. All right. Well, I think that's about the sum of it. I think there's, as always with the show, there's interesting bits. There's, good character moments. There's good acting moments. So maybe we can get into the episode breakdown and separate out some of those fine threads. Elysia, again, you have been doing yeoman's work. Thank you so much for doing all these episodes, breakdowns. We're so glad that you are a co-host with us on this show now. Please run us through the episode.
Okay. So we pick up with Vara showing back up at her house in the aftermath of the shootout last time. And now, interesting to note, there's purple blood on the walls. And we were saying, that. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I guess that was just like an error in post, just something about this. It just seems like there was an oversight on the details on this show. That seems like a consistent problem we're running into. But yeah, and so Fury calls her and they have this conversation. She says, it's the first time you called this number in years. So I guess he wasn't even calling her from space. So he's the worst husband, officially. Says, I've dialed this number many times. This is just the first time I press send. And then he says, I'm far enough away. It makes sense to keep going the way I'm going. Now, at the time, we're sort of led to believe that that's toward Russia. But I guess it was actually back toward her. We find out he was actually coming back to London. And
yeah, go ahead. Keep going.
No, I was just going to say, some people think that was Gaia calling, but I think it's got to be Fury. It just doesn't make sense at all if that were Gaia.
It was Fury too.
Yeah, this is where my confusion. Well, later I was very confused by this episode because when he puts he kind of tosses the ring into the bowl, and I just got a real sense of finality, like. Yeah. We've come to the end of our road. As much as our relationship is meant to us, good or bad, this is where we have to go because I've got to go back to space. And now there's all these other issues and it's just going to be messy. So let's end it here. But then at the end, the Kree want to make peace and you can be our primary ambassador. Wait a minute. What? If Nick and Vera had ended on this sad note, that would have been an interesting story. That would have been good character development. That was, what do you do in the service of humanity or the planet? Nick has spent all his energy and effort and, running these spy networks and just dealing with this really terrible stuff and doing terrible things to try to create a sense of good, right? That's an interesting story. And then what's the personal toll? Well, it ruined his marriage and it ruined his relationship because of the choices that he made, sacrificing these things. That is good story. That's like interesting stuff. And so I thought we were going there when he tossed the ring in the bowl, but nope, we didn't. We decided to, make peace and go live in space together.
Happy endings.
I think they're trying to play with us so much, like in terms of like, oh, will they or won't they, that they just got to make it make sense.
Right. And again, the interesting concept there of what did you do and can you come back from that? Can you, at what point do sometimes things are just too far and you can't repair that anymore? And really the best thing for both people is to separate and go off and find closure and healing in their own ways. So.
Okay, yeah. Well, then after this opening scene, we get the plot lines. Yeah, the scenes sort of go back and forth between the hospital setting and the New Scrollos setting. So we're just going to tackle them one at a time, starting with the hospital, where
that makes sense. Yeah,
where we finally get another advisor for the president. And
Thank you.
This admiral actually looks like she's from the military, wearing a uniform, unlike Rhodey, who's just like in a suit.
Oh, and then when we saw a peek through the door, there was a whole crowd of people outside.
Yes.
And
Finally.
aides looking in.
That was the stuff filmed in 2022. And then, she's like, well, President Vladimir, which, come on, that name, whatever, moving on. He says it wasn't him, it was a false flag. And Rhodey / Rava responds, did you take a stupid pill with your breakfast this morning, Admiral? Like,
come on.
Come on.
Like,
this
come
is...
Oh, my God. I was like... I know it's not Rhodey, but even a Skrull impersonating Rhodey would have to know that is not something I can credibly say without possibly blowing my cover.
Yeah.
And I think something military to military, you can have your thoughts or feelings about the person who's in that uniform. And Rhodey's, if anything, a soldier.
Yes.
There's no way he's going to disrespect the rank of a higher ranking soldier
in that
relative to him. No way.
And the thing I took from this
not in front of the president. Maybe in the bar after later somewhere, but not in front of the president.
It was a stark contrast to the scene between him and Fury in that second episode when they were talking about how you're not my brother just because you're black. Don't mean that we on the same page and things of that nature, right? That struck me more true than this scene with her talking to this general. It made no sense that Rhodey, would behave in this manner in front of the president, like you said, David, and actually think that no one would think this is weird. What's wrong with Rhodey? Like, what happened to him? Where did this come from? There's no possible way that anyone who knew Colonel Rhodes would say to themselves, there's not something wrong here. It just doesn't track. And I'm looking back at Grava's conversations with other folk outside of Nick Fury. How didn't they see this difference? How? Somebody explain it to me. Because I just don't get how people who would have known him would not see the difference in his attitude.
Can we also address the issue of his spinal injury? Because I believe, remind me the movie where we saw him in some very thin leg braces that were helping him walk.
Well,
they were very sleek and, minimalistic. And then now there's nothing, and there's no hint of the injury that he's sustained.
Well, that seems to be the last time we saw them with him with those braces was. Shall we discuss this at the end though? Because when we discuss,
let's do that. Yeah, fair enough. We'll put a pin in that.
Yeah.
All right, moving on.
Yeah, so they are interrupted by an aide, and there's real-time satellite images of quote-unquote Russian tanks taking position along the Finland and Ukrainian borders. And I'm like, okay, again, you rewrote stuff, and this is what you left?
Keep that?
Yeah, like what did you take out? And Rhodey Rava is like, here are some words I'd like you to put into your mouth as you address the public. Show strength, which... Yeah, I always think is the mark of weak leadership when you're like smashy, ask questions later. But I can understand it does actually make sense that Rava would be encouraging this, of course. But that the president is falling for it is like, okay, I don't know. Who's this guy? How'd he get elected?
And who is Rhodey to be giving the president the speech?
Yeah.
Like, how is that his role?
Yeah.
He's an advisor. He's a military advisor. Now he's making speeches. What is going on here? This is totally unbelievable. No, I don't believe any of it.
I believe the shape-shifting aliens way more than this. Yeah. And then Sonya calls and she's like, "Get the president out of there. Fury's headed straight for you." And actually, she's telling the truth. We find out later. So Rhodey Rava moves the president on a gurney. Yeah, the security is taken out one at a time with darts. And then, Ouchie Arm Aide ends up, like you said, giving up his freaking gun to the president because he demanded it. Yeah, and Rhodey Rava's like, "We can move him in here." And Sonya pops out behind the door with a gun. Real Rhodey would have known to check behind doors, which fair. Anytime you want to call out how bad this person is at their job, good. But how did Sonya know to be in that room? And then, they take it back out in the hall and there's a standoff.
To be fair, I didn't see a lot of this coming. Well, I don't know. Maybe I kind of gave up trying to understand what was going on here. So that
you weren't bothered by this so much.
Yeah, it was. It just became an absurd thing of running the president around on a gurney with his security being silently taken out, and it's like, oh, okay, yeah, there's some cat and mouse thing here afoot, and I just let it happen. So the president taking the gun was ludicrous, and I get what they were trying to go for was to put the president, this character into this life and death situation, and rather than put his trust in his advisors and his security detail and all of that, he's got to react out of fear, which then later informs his decision to make all non-humans who are living on the earth enemy combatants to make that designation. And so for me, I could understand the plot device that they were going for, which was to put him into this crisis moment, and in this crisis moment as a weak man, he's chosen fear over other choices. So I get that, but it was just ridiculous. No way the president would ever do that. Just not.
Do we even know he knows how to use the gun?
Yeah, exactly.
Was he a former military
No idea.
person?
We have no idea who he is. We don't
and
even.
Then what is that agent who is highly, highly, highly trained supposed to do with one arm and no gun?
Yeah.
Anyway, okay.
Yeah, reminds me of the Monty Python and the Holy Grail, the Black Knight.
Oh, right. Yes, exactly.
We're going to do bleed on me?
Yeah. Monty Python. Love those guys. Okay, this is a good time to take a break. And we're back.
Okay, so then we get a random scene in here that with everything that's been hacked out, there must be a reason this scene was included. But so we just see a handoff on an arid landscape where a classified file is handed over. And the only interesting thing I can see about it is a soldier who takes the file has Richards on his thing, but it's definitely not doesn't look like
Reed Richards.
Yeah, it doesn't. Yeah, definitely not. But I can't understand why that scene is still in there when it seems like they've taken everything else out. But
I thought it was authorization for the strike.
Yeah, but do we need to see that?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, an authorization for the strike is a telephone call to NORAD, to Under the Mountain, Under Cheyenne Mountain or whatever. What is this?
What did you just print it from the printer? Did you fax over the documents?
You faxed it, yeah.
What is this?
And and meanwhile at New Scrollos, talking about infuriating things. So Fury rolls up on Skrull base, and there are some crap guards that are easily distracted and taken out. But despite the guards out front, the base seems largely abandoned, and the bodies are left in the cafeteria where the graphic beatdown attempt took place, including Beto, and which was the fresh young kid that Gaia recruited herself. And since we know that was actually Gaia seeing him, that's sad, and that probably made her real mad. And then we get the clicking whine of a radiation detector that I'm just going to use the Fury name for this scene. The Fury turned on, and we see Fury stumbling and just gulping down these. They call them iodide pills, but okay, so I had to immediately pause when I was watching and like start looking some stuff up because none of this made any sense to me.
So, yeah, what's the science here?
So here's how it actually works. So it's potassium iodide, and these are pills that you take about 1 pill per day to block radioactive iodine being absorbed by the thyroid, and it's actually more important for kids than adults. You take 1 pill, it protects you for about 24 hours, and there's no point in taking more because you'll just pee out the rest and it'll cause extra side effects. They only protect your thyroid so that you don't get cancer in that way, but it doesn't protect you in any other way from radiation. And coughing is not a common side effect of especially sudden radiation sickness, like outside of, say, lung cancer treatments. But I guess it's the most common side effects are really like vomiting and diarrhea. So I guess maybe I'll give them that. This is more pleasant. But I don't know. Yeah, my headcanon is just like maybe Skrulls don't know about human anatomy. So like Gravik says this is a thing and Gaia's like, all right, I'll play it up. That's what I'm going with.
Yeah. It's always not a great mark when you have to do so much headcanon to make a show, to make a show work out. But yeah, it was really funny to see Samuel L. Jackson playing Gaia, playing Nick, playing fake sick. Right. It was a weird thing, and you're like, okay, and if that site was that radioactive, okay, granted they could, the Skrulls could, be there, I get it, but wouldn't that have hurt the human hosts that were also there? Maybe they doped them up in some way. Again, more headcanon to
protected them with something. Who knows?
It. But then they're all coming out of the cave, blinking-eyed and carrying each other, and they're fine. So
exactly.
Okay. And how did Gaia know about taking the pills? Because when Nick has that call, he's in the car.
I guess Nick told her, though, because that's clearly who he called at the end of the last episode.
Right.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. So Gaia gets inside as Nick, and we get the confrontation with Gravik inside the giant magic science ball, of course.
And it's just so apparent what's going to happen, right? Obvious.
And he says, everyone's locked up. What does that mean? Locked up? Like his own people are locked up, or he sent them away and is lying? I don't know. I shouldn't think about it too much. Fury's not doing well, so Gravik kicks the pills down the drain, which good because they weren't doing anything anyway, and then feeds Fury a flask to toast to Fury's last stand, and asks, where are the Avengers? The question of the series. I don't know why people keep pointing it out. And then he says, what about that invisible cloak and shield? The what now? Jean, do you have any idea what that's about?
I had no idea about that. Maybe he's talking about the space station.
Organization.
I don't know who he was referring to at that moment. The first thing that came to mind was like Cloak and Dagger.
Yeah, me too. But Shield doesn't.
It makes zero sense.
Doesn't acknowledge that they exist. Yeah,
exactly. So I was really at a loss for who or what Gravik was talking about in that moment.
Yeah,
and I'm still at a loss because I just don't know.
Yeah, there's been a lot of these little lines this season that just, I'm like, oh, well, maybe it'll get explained at the end, and it's not. So anyway, and then so Fury says to Gravik, you're using my skin as a face, but then actually it's Gaia pretending to be Fury. So that's like, yeah, that's the wrong kind of layers. Yeah, and Gravik says, this is the face I use, was the first human that I killed. You made me my first mission. You don't even remember, which makes sense because it's actually Gaia, not Fury. And says, I wanted to impress my hero, killed a misguided man with a wife and children, which, please, more info on that. I need to know what kind of misguided we're talking about. Yeah, and then says, every kill took a little piece of my heart. So
that right there was the moment that I said, this was a waste of an opportunity. Because when he said that, I said to myself, what a story that could have been told. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? I'd have been much more interested in that story than whatever was going on in this secret invasion.
I could see that storyline play out really nicely in a series of flashbacks where as we're learning more and more about Gravik, and they were building to this tension between Gravik and Fury coming into a conflict, and then that would be a great moment for this young idealist who is in the awe of Fury and feeling really great about having such a positive impact on the world and making a difference. And then he's ordered to do this thing, and he ends up having to kill this guy. And then that's that first drop of evil poison into his, system. And then that's, slowly changes him over time. That, as you say, Jean, would be a super interesting story.
Yeah.
I do think that for me personally, this speech that follows that was Gravik at his best for this series. But as Abby said on Twitter, too little, too late. Yeah.
Definitely agree with that. Definitely agree.
But Gravik says, Talos was weak. He turned a war people into a band of beggars. Not going to make his mistake of putting my trust in you. You used and discarded us, and everything I've done is going to be your fault. Everything I'm going to do, I'm going to kill you and humanity, all your fault. So, yeah. I
love it.
Yeah.
I love that we get a Gravik explanation. Like, we've been hinting at it. We've been saying this is personal for him. This is not about the greater good of Skrulls. That he has a thing with Fury, and this was the confirmation that this was about Fury and how Fury led him down the wrong path. And that's a great story to tell. Unfortunately, Nick Fury doesn't know this.
Right. Yeah, I hope Gaia tells him. Because then I was totally baffled by, because I didn't figure out at this moment yet that it was Gaia.
Mm-hmm.
I was totally baffled by Fury's response by, "You're right, I failed you, fine. I knew within a few years there was no other planet out there for you." And I was like, what? So now we have to question, is that actual information or probably just Gaia making it up? And then said, I knew I could only keep my promise if I built a home for you here, but it's easier to save the lives of 8 billion people than it is to change their hearts and minds. So on the one hand, there's a lot of truth in that. On the other hand, it's like, what? Let's not try? What do you think of that, David?
Sorry.
That he said, or Gaia as Fury says, I knew I could only keep my promise if I built a home for you here, but it's easier to save the lives of 8 billion people than it is to change their hearts and minds.
This is just weak sauce from Nick Fury. You made a promise.
But it's not Nick Fury. It's Gaia, though.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. I'm confused. I just don't.
I don't know what to make of it.
I can't work out the math here on Gaia versus Nick.
Who's saying what?
Yeah.
And in this moment, because I knew it was Gaia, right?
Right.
So I'm listening to it, and I'm like, okay, this is her father. Right?
Yeah, right.
Because this is what her father was trying to do, trying to set up. In retrospect, it seems as if Talos knew there was not going to be a found home for the Skrulls, right? In retrospect, he knew that this was it. We got to make a home here on Earth. So when he figured that out, I don't know. Did he say he figured it out during when the blip happened? Is that when the millions? I can't remember. He said when he said the million Skrulls came. Was it?
I don't think they said when, but I mean, we've gotten a few different dates thrown out there.
Right.
Would that make sense then? I mean, there's a logic there.
There is.
Talos saying that we brought in 1 million Skrulls, and guess what? You've lost half your Earth population, so no big deal. Nobody's going to see it.
Right.
Right.
2 million Skrulls. Yeah.
It's 2 million Skrulls. Yeah. So everything's in disarray. I don't know what's half the population of the Earth, 3 billion people. So what's 2 million off of 4? Right. Are we at 8 now? Oh my God. I remember when we were at 4 as a kid, we talked about the Earth's population. So what's 2 million against 4 billion?
Right.
That number of Skrulls could show up on the planet, and it's really not going to cause any kind of notice because everything's sort of in a mess right now because of the snap.
Yeah.
And the thing between the conversation, the scene between them, it was really not about the Skrulls at large. This was something personal between Gaia and Gravik.
Yeah.
It was personal for Gravik because he thought it was Nick Fury. And then now, he's still battling Talos at the end because that's who he sees Gaia representing, right? This notion that the Skrulls can coexist on Earth with humans, which he's totally against now. So, and then you have Gaia, who, yes, she's posing as Nick Fury and she's saying all these things, right? But at the end of the day, when she's looking at Gravik, what is she looking at? She's looking at the person that killed her parents.
Right.
So this series, with the secret invasion, was never about a secret invasion. This was always personal between Gaia, Talos, Gravik, and Nick Fury.
Yeah.
That's what the Secret Invasion series boiled down to me, and that's what I thought watching this scene.
Okay.
Which would have been a better story to tell.
And in general, it tracks to have Gaia having a shape-shifting race and doing this. Now, but okay, so this opens up another question. Skrulls can't tell when other Skrulls are doing their impersonation. I always thought that they just had a kind of
there's no Skrully sense.
Yeah, there's a little telltale. I kind of see that you're doing the thing, but they can't tell.
No.
Okay.
They don't know.
Yeah, because they're okay. That's interesting. I just assumed that there was some sort of poker player's sort of sixth sense. Oh, I know what your tells are, right? And so.
I mean, if they happen to know that particular Skrull who's put on a different face, they may be able to tell. Just like you know your friends and your loved ones, right?
Right.
But as far as
like personality cues, yeah,
exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. I know who you are. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. As far as like having a sixth sense about it, no.
Okay, that's good to know.
It was the talk of the blip that clued me in that this was actually Gaia because quote unquote Fury said, I was relieved when I flaked. And I was like, wait a minute, that's not in an Infinity War. He's like, he mouths like, what the fuck or something like that. Like, motherfucker.
That's right.
That's a good, That's a good pull. I didn't really realize that. I didn't have Fury's disappearance in my head fresh. So I was just assuming what the show was telling me was accurate, but that's a nice little twist right there.
But then, so fake Fury says, I came back to the Earth because of you. I felt responsible for you. Should have taught you to never give up the fight. And I'm like, wait a minute. That seems like the last lesson that Gravik needs to learn. This is not his problem. And then says, because I failed you and I failed our people or whatever, the people, I've decided to give you this vial. So I'm giving you what you want because I failed you. It's Carol Danvers' DNA along with the Avengers. So first of all, like Gravik should have known this was a trick. And second of all, what? They're just all like...
Yeah, let's talk about this. Go ahead, Elysia.
They're all mixed up in this vial. We'll get through what exactly they say is in there, but just I'm actually less bothered by this than I am about the iodide, but still, it's worth being said. Like, what's going on with this?
Oh man, let's go. Let's just run it down. What's in the vial?
And I also think it's funny. We're about to go through this whole list of everything in there that's in there, and he's like, "It's pure." I'm like, "No, it's like a complete mess."
It's anything but pure.
Yeah. All right. So what we've got is we've got Captain Marvel, of course. She was name called, which up to this point was one of the most OP people just on her own. Yep. But then we're going to add to that Captain America and Winter Soldier, which are super soldiers. We've got Thanos, which is like basically a sort of demigod, and I don't know. He's connected to the Eternals in the comics. Eternal. But in the MCU, is he?
Yeah, he is also because at the end of Eternals.
Yeah, his brother showed up.
So yeah, he's an Eternal and
all right. But anyway, so yeah, it was totally OP'd himself also, plus all of his kids. So we've been talking about Cull Obsidian this whole show. That's the super strong one.
Yeah.
We've got Ebony Maw, and that's the one where we saw Gravik's arm go like gray with the rings on the fingers and do the telekinesis. That was Ebony Maw. We've got Proxima Midnight, where she's just basically got like superhuman fighting abilities like speed and strength and all that. And then Corvus Glaive is the same, but also with healing. And then we've got an Outrider, which is one of Thanos' attack dogs, a Chitauri, which is one of those aliens from the Battle of New York in the first Avengers movie. And then from Guardians of the Galaxy, we've got Gamora, Drax, Flora Colossus, which is Groot, and Mantis, so empath abilities. That's a nice touch. We've got Thor Odinson, Valkyrie, the Tessa Thompson character, Thor's rocky friend Korg, which is a bit like the Thing. We've got the Frost Beast, of course, which apparently, I'm guessing that's what makes the stabby ice arm we see later.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I thought as well.
Yeah, because there's no other. So I guess that's the ice. We've been wondering the whole time, what's the Frost Beast ability? I guess that's it. We've got the Hulk, of course, and Abomination, even though Abomination wasn't at the battle for Earth, but he was in government custody for a while, so that would have been how they got his DNA. And same for Ghost. She wasn't at the Battle of Earth. She's was a villain from the second Ant-Man movie, but she was an agent for a while, so that's probably how they got it. And that's where the phasing powers come from Ghost. Yeah, and the question is there more that we didn't see? Like the side panel, there was Black Panther in there too, but we didn't see anything like that. Maybe they decided it was more tasteful not to include that. And I have questions because there's a lot of repetitive powers. So is there any reason why specifically these were picked? They seem to be in clusters. I don't know. What do you think, Sean?
I don't know. I kind of feel like, it was just like a big mop up. Like we're just going to go to a site and we're going to collect any blood or any samples that we can get, anything that we can use, regardless of who it comes from or how we get it. It doesn't matter. We just want it. And that seemed to be, to me, it doesn't track. It doesn't make sense because one, and I'm going back to this again. I'm sorry, but there is no way I feel that S.H.I.E.L.D. could have done this and no one noticed. That's the biggest thing that I'm taking away from this. Like Nick Fury had this plan to collect everybody's DNA. Okay, cool. Nick Fury collected everybody's DNA. Okay, cool. No one knows Nick Fury collected everybody's DNA. In the way
except
that
the
MC
Gravik.
Right, because he's the one that collected it, right?
Right.
But in the way that the MCU operates, the level of sophistication that they've given us, if you think about Wakanda and Wakanda's technology and how they, move around the world, move around the globe almost in silence, how would they not know? How would they not think to say to themselves, you know what? We can't trust the Americans. We just had this huge fight, and we cannot trust the Americans to be like, oh, okay, let's just clean everything up. How did no one think that?
Well, but
this
I guess,
was a possibility?
But they said, that Nick said that's why he sent in the scrolls, because I guess they probably posed as Wakandans.
Oh, good point.
Yeah, and then
Good
there's
point.
Getting in and getting out and being able to shapeshift. That's a significant tactical advantage in being unnoticed, or if you run into a problem, somebody challenges you. Right? There's a lot of normal TV spy acting stuff that they could get away with. So
I'll take those points.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, we see most of these powers play out in the fight that follows. I thought it was a cool concept with the morphing, like each body part would like morph while they use that power. And it was visually, it was a nice way to distinguish what's going on and, a fun Easter egg hunt. But on the minus side, they clearly didn't give the CGI artist enough time for this.
No, they did not.
Can I ask you a question, Elysia?
Mm-hmm.
All of those powers that you listed out,
mm-hmm.
Did you go online and find all of that, or did you recognize them, or do you recognize most of them straight off the bat?
So what I did is that scene where the names flash by, I took like a burst shot with my camera so I could scroll through them and see what exactly names are there. And then, I recognized all of them. I think I had to look up Outrider. I forgot. Yeah, that's what the Thanos's dog creatures are named. But the rest are. It's mostly pretty big names, although except Ghost. But aren't they bringing Ghost back for Thunderbolts or something?
I think they are.
Yeah, so maybe that's why they're
going to be on the team.
Well, can I just give you a virtual high 10 across our screens here? That is amazing skill level and dedication. So thank you for doing that, because that was one of my big questions. Was I would see these powers flick by, and a handful of them, I was like, okay, I think I know what that one. That's obviously Groot, or Mantis, simple things like that. But there were so many, and then of course, the CGI here or there. Yeah, good job. That's an impressive skill.
Or maybe I just spend too much time watching Marvel movies.
Yeah.
You can never spend too much time watching Marvel movies. Come on.
Good stuff.
Yeah, but yeah, so we get our Pele was completely correct, by the way. That we get our
Yes.
Gravik versus Gaia, same power set, punch out. I'm mad you killed my mommy and daddy. I do have a technical.
I totally
question,
was thinking of Pele's email there. And I was like, oh, here we go. They called it. Perfect. Good job. Internet points awarded.
I do have a question, though. Before we get all hunky Hulk Gravik and the punch-out bring the nuclear plant down fight, that, they get dosed in the giant magic science ball. But then, so Gravik, he sets it up and goes in there, knowing Nick's in there. But have we been told at some point, like, are humans supposed to die from this exposure? Like, why does he not care that Nick's in there with him, even if he thinks it's a human?
I had thought that too, and at first I wasn't sure. I'll be honest. I stopped trying to divine who is who, and I thought, oh, Nick Fury's going to get superpowers. Oh, that's going to be interesting. And then it was Gaia. I was like, oh, okay, that makes a lot of sense. My thought was that when Gravik turn on the machine, it's designed for Skrull DNA and physiology. And so, a non-Skrull would just get fried in some way and turn into some, hideous monster.
But then wasn't he surprised when Nick didn't fry when the machine?
But isn't that when the reveal happened?
Yeah, that's
but he doesn't seem surprised that Nick's not just dead on the ground,
Okay.
Just,
all right. I didn't analyze it that close.
But then the reveal happens and the theme song plays, and I still love the music. So just another shout out to Chris Browers. He's a great composer. And I have to give Gaia some credit too, that she's the only one who uses non-attack powers in the fight. So she uses ghost phasing, and she uses the Mantis empathy power to tell him to sleep. And that's how she ends up winning it. But how does she know how to use these powers? She's never met Mantis, but how does she use it the same way as her?
That I did notice that there were a couple of moments where you could see her thinking or using a power, and she's flying and maybe she's a little wobbly or something like that. So she's, they hinted at working it out real time. But how would you know Mantis and sleep?
Yeah, that's so specific.
Now, I did laugh. I thought that was very cute. I was like, great. She's using a complete, regardless of how she understands how to use these powers. The fact that she could use a non-combative thing, and I was like, oh, that was very clever and that was very cute and a really nice play to Gaia's level of intelligence and her cunning, and that she has achievement unlocked. Right, she's at a sort of a new level of being a smart spy type person. So So I appreciated that, and it was funny. I actually laughed. I was like, oh, that's cute. That's that was good.
Yeah, but then she ends it with a blast through the stomach, which I don't know. What do you guys like? Do you guys think he's really dead? His eyes go glassy, but this is someone who has extremis and Groot capabilities, and he grew back his brain when he was shot in the head before. So do you think it's possible he might be coming back?
Yes.
In the MCU, anything is possible.
Jean, do you think it's possible he might be the MCU version of Hulkling?
No.
Too OP?
Yeah, not even too OP because
Hulkling is a Hulk character with Skrull ties.
Yeah, but the Hulkling, he has a whole different comic book kind of history that it just wouldn't make sense to have Gravik take on that role. I don't see Gravik coming back as anyone but Gravik. He's going to be who he is, and he might be this version of the Super Skrull that poses a threat to the MCU. Right? I don't know. This fight scene to me signified okay, like we said earlier, Gaia is the most powerful non-cosmic being in the MCU currently, right? I want to know exactly, I guess we'll get to it, in a few minutes, but exactly what does that mean for the future of the MCU? Because
I don't know.
That is a huge question.
It's and it's part of the reason why I'm frustrated with this series and this fight scene. Like you said, how does she know how to use mantises? Very specific. Go to sleep. You know what I'm saying? It's a very specific thing. Yeah. And she just got these powers unless she somehow downloaded how to use them when they are put into you.
Was she watching tape of previous fight scenes?
I mean, if this were Taskmaster, that would make sense.
That would make sense. Yeah. But we don't get a sense
they
that
could have
is.
given it some way. Like they could have seeded that if they wanted, because that was a nice way to end the fight. They could have just seeded, I don't know, somebody said something to her, I don't know, but they just, weren't tying together the pieces. And then Gravik, his last words are, "You're just like your father, just like them." And I'm like, how so? And like who, and how is that an insult right now? Like,
right,
I'm very...
right. And I guess maybe he felt like Gaia was supposedly on his side at some point, right? Like willing to do whatever it takes to bring the Skrulls a homeworld. Mm-hmm. But as we learned, this was never about bringing the Skrulls a homeworld for Gravik. Yeah. So for him to even say you're just like your father, what does that even mean? Mm-hmm. That's what I took when he said that. I'm like, so what? What does that mean? Why shouldn't she be like her father? There's nothing that's happened in this series to make me think that she shouldn't be like her father. So why would you think that she shouldn't be like her father, Gravik? As your dying, last words. Why is that going to upset her? There's so many questions that statements like that give me that I have a hard time saying to myself, trying to figure out why people say the things that they say. I want to know why they say the things that they say. And this fight scene, while it was cool to see them use their powers and all of that, it wasn't my favorite fight scene in the show.
What was your favorite fight scene in the show?
I think my favorite fight scene in the show was in the meat locker.
Oh yeah, okay, fair. Me too.
They had all of this great opportunity to give us a real OP fight scene. It was fine. It was cool, but it wasn't end game. You know what I mean? It wasn't anything that I would be like, you have to see this fight scene. You know what I mean? Yeah. You have to watch it. I can't tell anybody, you have to watch this fight scene because they use all these super Skrull powers.
Right. It was a good concept, but again, the execution.
It seems to me that it's almost a inappropriate use of the television show to use this OP fight scene. It's a 6-episode limited series, and you're creating the most super power being. And were they really hoping that this would mark the show to be at this next level of a cinema, of a movie related experience?
See, I don't agree with differentiating like how much movies or the shows should contribute to the MCU especially because the shows have more space to do more meaningful things.
Uh-huh. Yes.
But I get your point. Yeah.
Yeah.
It just, if it were a better show, then I would
maybe we'd feel different. I'd feel different about it.
Mm-hmm. And for a 6-episode run to then result in this, that's a lot of heavy lifting. Regardless of this show in particular, just to do that in a television show in general, that is a huge buildup. And I mean, if we look at Thanos and the Avengers, how many years was the buildup to Endgame 1 and 2? Very long, right? It was a lot of work. It was a lot of effort to very careful nudging and bringing things together and lining them up. Some really great successes and some, not so great movies. But it was a really focused effort to do that. And then just to try to shove 6 episodes to get us to this point of a super.
Yeah, I mean, this is no Endgame, but she could change the next Endgame.
She could.
Yeah.
She could.
Right. Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. But do we get a sense of that going forward? At the end, I got no sense that she's going to be, some sort of major player in the MCU. Because I have no sense that Sonya is a major player in the MCU.
Yeah, I guess in our wrap-up episode, we're going to have to pick up like is Gaia going to show up in the Marvels? What's going to be her role? Yeah.
Right.
So back at the hospital to wrap up that non-reveal, Fury does show up, as Sonya promised, but the president's not sure who to trust. And I don't know why Sonya didn't just like injure him like she did to her other Skrull reveals, like cut off a finger, shoot him in the hand, whatever. I guess maybe because the president might have shot her. I don't know.
No, it made no sense. It's okay. We can say it. It made no sense for her not to do that.
They made a very specific point of her shooting her boss.
Right. And the finger cutting off.
And the finger.
Right. And the finger. Yeah. So they laid the track work. And then when it was important,
they
didn't use it.
Yeah. Ritson gets like a fast, scroll debrief on the spot while Rhodey Rava is like, just stay the course and all our enemies will be vanquished. Like talking to him like he's a child playing a video game. I don't know. And then, we see the bomb meanwhile opening, like this is supposed to be some stakes for us. And Fury's like, just delay and you can always do it later if I'm wrong. So we get the struggle for the gun. Fury shoots Rhodey/Rava through the head, and we've got the purple blood again. Which I'm like, too bad. Oh, of course, yay, the president cancels the strike. Yay, I guess. But it's too bad that we lost Rava because that could have been an interesting villain.
She could have been an interesting villain. I agree with that. Can I ask you guys a question? Did you get any sense of watching this? Were you at all worried that this wasn't going to go down the way that it went down?
No.
Meaning, I think I wasn't worried. The one thing that shocked me was Ritson's decision. That's what I was not prepared for. That Skrulls were going to be made enemies of, or sorry, not Skrulls, but
what happens after this? You mean?
Right.
Yeah. That's the only thing that I guess to answer your question.
In this moment, there was never 1 second that I thought that the bomb would drop.
Okay. Oh, right.
Yeah, exactly.
Never
Same.
once.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So this tense exchange that happened
I see.
was not tense for me at all.
Yeah.
It was just infuriating to watch Sonya try to explain to the president that this is to watch Nick Fury try to explain to the president that this is a Skrull instead of showing the president that this is a Skrull until the very last moment where they shot the Skrull in the head.
Yeah.
It made no sense.
Yeah, they spend most of the rest of the episode like building up this, is there a human versus Skrulls tension? Because first we get Gaia, she's being an ally again like her father was and is freeing the humans from New Skrullos. So we see Dr. Dalton, the human form, the UK Prime Minister, the art dealer from the first episode, the female Skrull warrior human who never did anything interesting, so must have been cut, human pig and Rhodey, Ross. And Ross asked Colonel Rhodes, how long have you been here?
Yeah.
And Rhodey looks gaunt and can't walk on his own. So, you, David, you were bringing up the leg braces earlier. But so he had, after he was paralyzed in Civil War, he had leg braces that were helping him walk. And the first time we saw him without them was Falcon and the Winter Soldier.
Right.
Okay.
So some people are like, oh, it's been since Civil War because he was in a hospital gown. But I'm thinking, no, that pisses people off because then that means he wasn't there for Tony's death and all that. But I think we should look at the leg braces and that he was swapped out right before Falcon and Winter Soldier which is kind of half satisfying to me because like I can accept it. But if that was Rava, it was at least Rava with a different writer because there's a very different personality. But
well, and this goes to the inattentive care. I've come to expect from the MCU that these kinds of plot details are very carefully tracked.
Right.
The show, the resources that they have for writers to be able to find these details, hold them, carry them forward, intentionally plant this one in this movie so that pays off in that show, which pays off in this movie. That is what I expect this genre, this subgenre of MCU stuff to do, and to do it well and to do it excellently. And then to retro this in this way feels inattentive to me. They were not so winded it, and we should be able to go back and clearly identify the moment that the switch for Rhodey happened. Right, we all the internet sleuths should be able to go, oh, okay, I think it's right here. Here it is, and that's satisfying for the MCU. But to have this vague, wait a minute, when, where, it feels like a poor decision in the present that was not pre-planned that retroactively changes a whole bunch of stuff. And maybe you can do that with comic books because of it's a different type of medium. But in this medium, it's poor planning, in my opinion.
For me, I when I saw Rhodey, I immediately hoped that he had been replaced, after Civil War. I'm not one of the persons who was upset because I think that would be great for his character going forward. Going into, Armor Wars or whatever role that he's going to play in the MCU, to have him deal with the fact that he wasn't there for Tony's death, to deal with the fact that all of these things happened while he was, replaced, basically. So, I hope that's what happens, but there's a part of me that knows that probably won't be what it is. But I think that would be really, it would be really cool to see him react to those things that happened, in the years that he was gone. Instead of making it more recent, I hope they push it back to post-Civil War.
I think the only reason why I hate that idea is because of how the character was handled in this TV show. I think if they had written this version better, then I would be more open to that. But now I'm like, I don't know. Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah. And then, and so we get, we're switching back and forth between what's going on with Guy and then the Ritson stuff. And so Ritson, he's telecasting that stuff that you were mentioning before, saying there was a terrorist attack on my motorcade and it was done by Skrulls, even though there was footage of Talos rescuing him. But anyway, so now he's like, I want to declare all off-world born species enemy combatants. And first of all, this is never how, even when someone who's ultra conservative and wants to crack down, they never do it in this, I'm declaring all war on, all Jewish people, for instance. They do insidious little changes bit by bit into the laws. And that's how they, that's how the Holocaust happens. It's not that suddenly it's one day, well, I just got out of the hospital and now I'm going to kill everybody. It's like, no, it's, and if you actually show that in popular media, then people can understand and protect themselves against it more. If you present it like this and people are like, well, I haven't seen somebody just declare war on all of the species, so I guess we're safe.
Does this decree mean the same for the Asgardians?
Yeah, because Ritson's the one who signed the trade pact with them we saw in Wakanda Forever. Right. So... yeah. So is he suddenly turning but he didn't give them an exception, Right. He didn't say all non-shapeshifting, whatever.
No, exactly. He said everybody.
Yeah.
So who else is here that we know of? We know the Asgardians are here. We know the Skrulls are here. Are there any other that we don't know about that maybe Ritson does know about? Again, I wish I knew more about Ritson.
Yeah. Yeah, because he also says, we know who you are, we know how to find you, and we will kill you all. So, and then we see, the vigilantes, they obviously are getting the names from somewhere. So where's he getting the names?
Where's he getting the names from?
Sonya? Well, yeah. I mean, they could have taken an inventory of everybody who came out of the basement of the reactor.
Right.
Yeah, that's true. But then they know that some of them have been returned. Yeah. Well, so then there's some questions. Okay. So we get the vigilante guys who come in and they, first of all, the studio has the worst security of a bunch of guys.
The worst. How
they gunned down Shooter McGavin on air, but we didn't see him come out of that facility. So maybe he was elsewhere, the human version. But then they shoot the UK Prime Minister, who's already human. So then we see the red blood. So it's like their intel then is kind of faulty. And then, we see Shirley from one of the first episodes attacked. And she's turns out she's kind of awesome and defends herself. And it makes me even more upset.
Where was she?
Yeah.
Where was she?
I think they must have seriously cut some scenes with her,
Do you have any intel, Elysia, about the production? Was this always going to be a 6-episode thing? Is this did they cut back? It was going to be a movie.
Yeah, it was a long time ago, but I think the main thing about them switching things up is the fact that they rewrote a lot of it. I'm sure the COVID caused some rewrites. We know that the Ukrainian invasion caused some rewrites, but then obviously we have questions about what did that change and why it didn't change some other things.
So there's really no clarity of how things went behind the scenes with what the original plan
I think that the problem is a lack of clarity in general.
Yeah, well, indeed. Because again, when we've said this before, and I'll just say it again, there is such good material here. You could have run this out for 2 seasons.
Yeah.
And had some great cliffhangers and great backstory and had a real impact on the MCU overall. So really wasted potential.
Yeah. So Ritson, Fury calls him, and when he's in his car at night, again, one last call at night, just at least the show's consistent there. Fury says, I was also relieved we made it out alive until that hateful ass speech. I'm like, well, all right, this had me on Fury's side here.
This president is getting no respect. A lot of people
he's not earning
trash
it
in and around him. So
yeah. He's not earning it. But and then Fury says to him, that's some real one president stuff. So You think that's setting up the Harrison Ford coming in?
Yes, absolutely.
Oh wait, what? Harrison Ford? What?
Yeah, he's gonna play Thunderbolt Ross, I believe, and who's going to be the next president of the United States.
Okay.
Yeah, because they keep telling us things about future movies. That's going to be in the new Captain America movie. So yeah, we already know that. So we're just waiting for how that's going to be set up.
Okay. Yeah, and then with the strikes and everything like that, everything's gonna be really pushed and
pushed back.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay. All right. I had not. Yeah, I don't follow as close as you guys do. So
but yeah. So just my last question about Ritson is like, this is the guy Talos died to save. Like, come on,
you know, come on now, come on now, and they have a scroll detector now. Who made it? Like, we know how to find you. Okay,
and how does it work? We haven't seen it. Yeah. I don't know. I have lots of questions.
We know who you are bit. Okay, I get it. The we know how to find you bit, I don't get, because if my cover is blown, I'll just take a new one.
Yeah,
I'm a shapeshifter after all, right?
Right.
So okay,
and they didn't introduce any sort of detection technology other than cutting somebody's finger off.
Yeah, no, they have not. So that's interesting that they have one. Apparently, maybe, who knows?
Whether I don't know if that's truth or bullshit, or maybe he's still a scroll underneath it all. I don't know. Anything could be true. But then, we also have another scene that seems like it was cut down from, there must have been much more, because we have Sonya and Gaia finally meeting. We meet at last, which I honestly felt that like, yay. She says, I'm a friend of a friend. Your people need a leader. I'll help you fight Ritson. And Gaia says, my father entered into a deal like that, and it didn't go well. And Sonya said, so let's not repeat their mistakes. She's, in her typical Sonya tone, like, no warmth needed. Let's just use each other, keep this planet and our people safe. And they're like, dealsies. And she's like, come on, let me show you something. And somehow Sonya knows about this warehouse where there's just like tons of people lying down in scroll captive machines. And Gaia doesn't know about this. She's as shocked by it. And Sonya says, this is how the enemy got so good. What does that mean?
Yeah, who's the enemy?
How does she know? Yeah. The scrolls, I guess. But
I actually kind of blanked the scene. Now that you're saying it, I remember it. But I think I must have just been checked out at that point, because the alleyway meetup and come with me and Sonya, obviously Olivia Colman and great character. But it just seemed a little bit hand wavy. I know everything about you, and I know exactly how to find you. And it just didn't. There was just some believability issues here that I wasn't vibing with.
It was such a cool setup and visual, but it was like, well, why didn't you use that? Or it feels like something must have. That's one of the places where it feels like something must have been cut.
Is Sonya building her own Avengers? Like, is Gaia the first?
Yeah, it could be building a British team, because that would be cool. There's,
is she doing? But we don't know. We have no idea. We don't even know, what the future holds for these characters. So this scene left me with more questions. As you guys can tell, I've been having questions for the entire for this entire episode, and this just left more questions for me, and that's not really a great thing. Because sometimes the questions are good, right? Sometimes you want to, I want to see where this is headed, and then we could, do some interesting things and think about where it might be going. But that's not what I'm doing here. What I'm doing here is just questioning why. And that's not cool.
Yep. And then the whole story ends on the love story, which kind of makes it seem like that's the core of it. But for me, I think it connected more with me than it did with a lot of other people. But we get Fury coming home, and he's sorry that he wasn't there. So I guess that's character arc. Yeah. And what's her name again? Charlene Woodard. She's incredible again. Just got to say it again. And she says, I know who I am when you're not here, which, she means she's a Skrull. It's when you come back that I start to wonder if you fell in love with me or this human face. And he's like, it's you, baby. Give me one last chance. I'm leaving tonight. But he doesn't invite her to go with him. So then she's like, so I guess this is goodbye then. Because he's just like, oh, I want you back, but I'm leaving. Like, okay. And then he's like, if you forgive me, you know where to find me. So to quote Talos, use your words, Fury. Is she invited or not?
So again, we had the opening scene where I thought the relationship was done, and then now he's back, and then they go off into space together again. Just really felt that there was a lot of other chefs in the kitchen, and they were throwing in spices and salts and peppers and whatnot without having a cohesive whole here. This was just all very confusing for me.
I mean, first of all, I just want to give a shout out to the cinematographer again, Remy Adafarasin, who just, again, beautiful cinematography. So
that was a pretty scene. It was.
Yeah, that field at night with the spaceship lights and the headlights. Yeah. But yeah, there's a lot of questions there. There is some of it seems to be setting up for the Marvels, like maybe that whole Kree peace talks thing, that he wants Vara to come help him with. That might be something from the Marvels movie that we're going to see. Yeah, but then there's also, for me, it worked with, she's, like you said, call me by my real name. This is my real face. Will you accept me as I am? And Fury looks at her like, with this look of love and awe, like he sees beauty, and they kiss and have that nice ending where they exit stage spaceship and they just like leave their cars there. So I don't know, whatever, fine. But then my question is, she also says she has work that's never been more important. So what do you think that work is? Like, is it with the plants something, or?
I'm guessing that it's to make sure that Ritson doesn't follow through on his delivery
fair.
And, kill all the Skrulls.
I think it has to do with the plants. As I'm thinking about it now, if we go back to episode 1 with Beto in the car and he's eating the Skrull fruit, it kind of reminds me of the plant that gives the Black Panther their powers.
Right. Okay. That's interesting.
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, that could be very
herb.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you. That's what it is. This could be, put on your tinfoil hats here, and this could be way off base, but there's something I really thought it was about the plants and doing that work, because they made a point there of she's always in her lab doing plant work. They set up the whole beginning of the series with something related to plants. So that's my inclination.
Okay.
It's possible. Yeah. Make this a real home world.
Anything's possible in this show at this point. Right. So a Kree Skrull peace deal is possible in this. It just
possible, but unlikely, because that's not drama.
Still, it's just such a terrible throwaway line. Oh, by the way, we're going to have peace. Come help me.
Yeah.
What?
That's why I feel like it's got to be setting up the Marvels.
Right.
Yeah. And again, I should just keep myself calm here. There are, I expect the writers and showrunners of the MCU properties to carefully craft the interconnections between these. And this just felt, again, very inattentive. No setup, no indication.
Right.
Oh, what if you're watching the show for the first time? Who are the Kree? What does that have to do with anything?
Right.
It's just, it's just a bad line with no context for it. So. Sorry, I'm getting a little agitated.
No, well, it's fine. It's okay.
Yeah. And then in their final great decision, they decided to make this the first MCU property with no credit scene.
The crap is that?
That was my whole time. I was like, at least give us a good credit scene. But this is like, fine, whatever.
And
Jean, you were right. Nobody showed up.
Nobody showed up.
Nobody showed up.
I guess Gaia showed up.
Everybody.
But she was already there.
Yeah.
Everybody showed up, so it means nothing. No, it's just everything means nothing at this stage. So I'm getting to the point of just bracketing this show and just setting it aside, and maybe like they do in the comic books, you can just sort of go, oh, okay, this thing.
There was a story once that was told.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
But I like the TVA idea. Oh, snip.
Just get rid of this entire timeline, right? That's right. Just do away with it. So, the no credit scene really bothered me. It really bothers me.
It's out of the norm.
It is just so. What are we doing here? Like, I come to you because of these things.
Right. Delight me.
This is part of the charm. This is part of what it means to sit through and watch an MCU project.
Right.
That I'm going to get something at the end that's going to leave me excited for what's coming in the future. None of that. Are we serious? Come on,
Mm.
man. Come on, guys. Come on, gals. Come on, people. Come on, studios. Come on. Come on, showrunners. What are we doing here? What's the explanation for that?
I don't know.
That could actually make sense.
Would it even be more tinfoil hat to go in and say that there were some impacts on the leadership change at Disney? Because I believe Iger came in and said we're gonna, but the 6th episode was already committed by the time Chapek and Iger swapped roles, right?
Yeah, but they obviously have reworked it a number of times. So I think there's a lot of things that went wrong along the way that just gave it this hack job. And I'm guessing at the end, probably would have been handy if they had writers in the last phases if they were like cobbling this back together,
Truth. It speaks some truth there. Yes. That's the job of a writer is to make these things cohesive and make sense.
This is why, a writer's job is not done when the script is done.
Right.
The writer's job
Not
is done when the show
paper.
is on the air. Yeah.
Right.
Exactly. Oh, Lordy. Okay. Well, do we have anything more on the episode or...
That was the end. That was the end of Secret Invasion.
They walked into the light.
Yeah.
They walked into the light. Indeed.
I mean, I made some more notes that, we talked about a wrap-up episode, so we can get more into it then.
Well, Elysia, thank you again so much for doing the episode breakdowns for this series. Let's step into the light of a commercial break really quick, and then when we come back, we'll do some comics corners. All right, and we're back. Jean, you have some comics corner comps for us. What do you got?
Yeah. Okay. So, like I said earlier, I hate to be that person, but the book, the written story was so much better than this television series. And part of the reason that I feel that way is because of the gravity of the situation. In the comic book story, you really get a sense of scale, of the importance to the Earth, to the universe that this story is happening. The cast of characters that they incorporated in 2008 was much greater than what we saw in this series, and there was a seriousness to it that I never felt in this series. There were important characters who were revealed to have been Skrulls, for a long time. There was genuine shock that these people had been replaced. At the end of the series, there were lives lost that had real impact on the MCU comic book world. So there were big, big differences in how I read those comics and how I viewed this series. The ending in the comic was just so much better than what we got here. Ritson has become this bad, I don't want to say he's a bad guy, but when you're calling for the, elimination of an entire species that lives on your planet, you're kind of a bad guy, right?
Genocide's generally frowned upon.
Is really bad. And for him to go from, really uninformed to a genocidal maniac in the span of, this 6-episode series,
his screen time was like 5 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. And he went from, totally clueless to we're just gonna kill everybody who's not human. That didn't feel right to me. Whereas in the comics, at the ending, we get Norman Osborn, who is an established villain who kills the head of the Skrull invasion, Queen Veranke, and essentially does it on TV for the world to see. And this places him in a position of authority, of being almost a hero to the populace of Earth. And in that way, he was able to gain access to power that he never had as a villain. He becomes the head of the organization Hammer, which at the end of the comic book series replaced S.H.I.E.L.D. because S.H.I.E.L.D. had been infiltrated and therefore S.H.I.E.L.D. was disbanded.
So Hammer's kind of like what Saber is to the MCU?
Yeah.
Or sorry, not Saber. Sorry, Sword.
What Sword is, yes, in the MCU. Norman Osborn, who is the Green Goblin for, Spider-Man character, very at that point in time was irredeemable and just villainous through and through, is now hailed as a hero and running the security for the US and basically for Earth. That had some real gravitas to it, and it led directly into Dark Reign, which is basically Norman Osborn taking over. So I got none of that from this series. I got none of the seriousness, none of the, oh shit, I can't believe this is happening in this series. And that's what I bemoan. And that's what I regret that Secret Invasion didn't give us, those oh shit moments.
So, question. I mean, it seems like, do you think maybe this Secret Invasion story isn't actually over because they had so many teases at the end that just leave things open, and it almost feels like they're planning to wrap it up in somewhere else because we have that mysterious room full of people that Sonia showed us. We've got the Kree scroll, peace negotiations coming up, and yeah, some people were wondering if maybe Thunderbolt Ross, Harrison Ford, maybe he could take the place of the Norman Osborn character in this, and that could be how he becomes president. That's just some speculation I've seen. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I don't know because, they haven't given me any reason to think that.
Yeah.
What I mean?
I can desperate hope.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. People are hoping, and I get it. But again, just going on based on the story that's being told so far, I don't see Thunderbolt Ross being anything but Thunderbolt Ross, because in the comics he's a jerk. Yeah. He's not villainous in the way that Norman Osborn is, but he is.
But he was an antagonist last time we saw him in the
MCU.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely. So that could be, but will it be? I don't know. Yeah, I just, again, more questions than answers, and questions not in the good way that the comic book left me with questions.
Wah, wah. And this is where we reiterate that our love for the MCU has not waned.
No, not at all. Not at all. Not at all.
Just because we don't love this particular show, we still found things to love about it.
Let's see what happens in the Marvels if this story, Loki, if this story continues in the Marvels, right? I
think it's gotta, right? But hopefully, but written by somebody else, right. Definitely. So,
right.
And hopefully with less studio,
interference,
rearranging. Yeah.
So when we were at the beginning of the season making these comparisons to Andor, there are...
Sorry.
We have to make some, adjustments for that, obviously. But I think without taking the shows in a direct comparison, but letting them, sort of stand on their own, but isolating some of the things that I wanted for this season relative to what Andor gave us. One of the things that I really appreciated about Andor in the Star Wars universe was that it was a very dark and serious affair.
Right.
That it had to do with things in the shadows. It had to do with hard subjects. There was a serious, and as John says, a gravitas and heaviness to the material that you found in the comic books. And so coming into this series, this season, the series, however you want to call it, that's one of the things that I was looking for, Jean, which I think you are saying you've missed because the comic books were serious. There was not the same level of seriousness in this series, and that is again a disappointing thing. I was really hoping for something because we've got a lot of explosions, we've got a lot of big space battles in the MCU overall. Here's a very boiled down, simple story between in this conflict between these individuals and between these races and the Earth, and it was very focused. And I really wanted that whoa, this is this has stakes. This is important. This has ramifications, and to feel that, and I didn't feel it.
I think to the earlier points that you both made is that given time, maybe that we could have gotten that. Right?
Yeah.
6 episodes, there's no way.
Well, no, I disagree because I think you can do a lot with.
You can.
Yeah, I think that they just squandered that time because that's way longer than a movie. You could do it in a movie. So
that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So, all right. Anything else on the comic books, Jean?
No,
Okay.
I'm not going to compare.
Okay. We're going to go from there.
Nothing compares to comic books. So rest in peace.
We do have some feedback. A couple of things. We have Okie Dokie Dokie left a comment on Apple reviews. Thank you very much for giving us a great review on Apple Podcasts, and any other listeners who feel that we've done a good job. We certainly would appreciate that. And yeah, these reviews they're meaningful for us. So thank you. Let's see. They did have some specific show related stuff. So it wasn't just a general comment, but it was a specific show related thing. They said, as to Vara not recognizing Gaia, even Talos didn't know that was his daughter until she said so. This must be a newish face since they started locking up people in a nuclear plant. I doubt Vara goes there as she's deep undercover as a double agent, kind of. Keep up the good work, and thanks for being in even when you're out. Well played. It's annoying when something is bad, so podcasts just stop talking about it. We, listeners, fans, still want to process the episode, maybe especially when it's disappointing. Thanks for all your thoughtful work.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Thank you, Okie Dokie Dokie. Jean, any thoughts or
Yeah,
reactions?
that's a great point. We want to process even when it's disappointing.
Yeah.
Right. And that is the essence of why we do what we do.
That's right.
We want to praise what needs to be praised and find the good in things that we can find. When things are not going the way that we wanted them to go, it's nice to be able to talk about it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really appreciated this comment. I didn't actually think about it in this way, that we still need to process, even if it's not meeting our expectations.
Yeah.
Elysia, is that a similar thought for you as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think that sometimes you can learn even more from fumbles than from the successes. So
interesting,
yeah. And as far as the recognizing Gaia thing, like, yeah, okay, that's good headcanon. It comes back to what we keep saying. Why do we have to make so much headcanon for this show? But yeah, I think it gives us an opportunity, this show, to analyze, like, well, when something doesn't work, what causes that? What causes the show to not reach its potential?
Right.
Yeah. All right. We got another email from Pele. Thank you so much, Pele, for engaging with us and sending in your thoughtful replies and really taking the time to get your thoughts out. So it's always great to get feedback. We do this as much to interact with you as to process our own, as Okie Dokie Dokie said there. So their email starts off. I'll just quickly say that episode 5 was not good. Gravik doesn't make any sense and behaves like a child. Any comments on the Gravik over the top sort of attitudes and behaviors?
Agreed.
Yeah, it's a simple one. All right. On the point regarding the runes, however, I missed them completely on the first viewing, and not only were the Finns not Norse, there's zero cultural importance to the runes in modern-day Sweden, Norway, or Denmark. Even ignoring their geographical displacement, they have no place on the gravestone. I noticed that in our Discord, there was a whole bunch of conversation, Elysia, that you were having.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Did you have anything to pull from that to react to Pele's?
No. Apparently I misspoke, and after I said that the Finns are not Scandinavian, maybe I accidentally said that they are, but just to be clear, they're not Scandinavian. They're not Norse. They are from the Nordic countries. Right. And while we're at it, the Netherlands, also not Scandinavian, not Norse and not Nordic either, just putting it out there.
Yeah, so there was some good conversation and some back and forth about variances between cultures, and it even expanded beyond that. So yeah, if you're looking for a cool place to discuss these ideas even more in depth, then join us on our Discord. There's a lot of great people out there, and we're chatting about stuff. And
real quickly on this point, right? This is what is so cool about storytelling, that you can have these sorts of breakdowns and conversations. Like, why is it important that these runes exist? Why isn't it important that these runes exist? How did they Why? This makes good fodder. You know what I mean? We're able to talk about why Finland is not Scandinavian. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
This is good talking points too, because there are a lot of people who didn't know that.
Right. Right.
And this gives the opportunity to learn something that, you may not have known. And I think that's even when things are not done well, there's still an opportunity to learn from them, like you said, Elysia.
Yeah, and don't OD on potassium iodide and think that you can take on Chernobyl,
We are not medical professionals, but we can do
But
the
I can tell you
research.
not to do that.
Exactly. And Pele points out, too, that, this is just sort of some misappropriated, pointless cultural stuff. And it just, it doesn't do anybody any service one way or the other. So, all right, they continue.
And if it had been in an Asgardian village, Pele said, it would make more sense, which definitely is true.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
But apparently this show forgot that New Asgard exists. Moving on.
Yeah, all the more. Every time we look at these things, we just realize that there's some weird warped effect around the outside of the show, and why or what decisions they made. Some weird stuff happened. So anyway. It continues, they somehow managed to tie together the whole mess, but I don't know if I like this series as a package. The beginning was strong, but they really fumbled the rest. And while the ending was okay, all in, I'm not satisfied. I was too quick to excuse the show in the middle. Shame, such a good concept. I think, we're all roughly on that
there.
thing.
Yeah.
It started out fine. It was going to be a fine television show. We weren't worried. And then we kind of, got messy.
Well, I disliked the middle the most, but yeah.
Okay. Very uneven, right? We've got an uneven show. Who decided to call the president of Russia Vladimir? I think, Elysia, you pointed that out. Did they change it last minute from Putinsky or something? I found the way they split up the narrative between the hospital scene and the at first infuriating Nick and Gravik scenes compelling, and the reveal of Gaia really saved that entire scene. I was impressed with how they managed to trick me even after writing in with the theory of how it would all go down. For all the weak setup, they put a nice bow on it. There you go. So, again, we're finding areas of enjoyment and where we can appreciate the show. They close up, Ritson is speaking bull, and it shouldn't take a literal genocide to Fury to realize that he's been on the wrong side the entire time. Bit annoying that the confirmation of my Fury didn't try to find a new world theory turned out to be a fake out, but I'm taking it as canon. It's still the only explanation.
I don't know. I mean, because Gaia said it when she was pretending to be Fury, so I don't know if it's true or not.
Yeah. This idea of Fury being on the wrong side, again, that could have been a really interesting thing.
Yes.
He could have had a come to the surface realization moment when he goes, oh, I miscalculated, or I didn't think through the consequences, or I was working in service of X, but X was really trying to accomplish Y the entire time. So there's a lot of twists and turns that were just missed potentials, missed opportunities here, as we've been saying this whole time. So yeah. All right. Pele, thank you so much again for writing in. We really appreciate it. Keep writing in because the MCU email address will stay active as we go forward. Real quick, while we're here, we're in a couple of weeks, we're going to do kind of a wrap-up episode, right? And we're going to talk about some of the larger sociological issues that were presented in the show, talk about a little bit of what this may mean for the MCU going forward. Yeah. And then I think we're going to talk some MCU news because some things are happening and shifting and changing. Things are being pushed and pulled and moved and whatnot. And then Halloween. Elysia, you are a big Halloween MCU supporter. I didn't even realize this was a thing. It just was kind of there for me. New. I didn't realize it was a intentional effort that they have. So can you draw a little box around that offerings for us?
Yeah, I mean, well, it's not just Halloween. And like last year, we got 2 holiday specials. We got Halloween and Christmas.
True,
And so hopefully, I mean, who knows with the writer strikes last year with the Halloween special, like I was the one person out there the whole time. I was like, I swear we're getting Werewolf by Night. And everyone's like, it's not announced. It's not announced. It's not happening. And then it's September. Boom, they announced it, So I know that they were planning another special. I know they have specials planned for the next few years.
Okay.
But the question is it going to happen given the current situation with the strikes and everything? So
and prior to that, we had the Ghost Rider, right? That was a Halloween special.
No, it's not. Ghost Rider is one of the future planned ones.
Oh, sorry. Who is the going backwards?
Werewolf by Night. So far, we've only had Werewolf by Night.
Oh, and that's set up. What am I confusing with the motorcycle rider with the chain?
Well, yeah, that's Ghost Rider. He's a Marvel character, but he's not yet in the MCU. But
where did we
unless you count Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
We got
it was in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. That's what it was. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
We cover so much different shows that sometimes the memory banks get a little corrupted. So that's what it was. I knew that he was out there. So, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, that's one of the rumors of what's coming up. But they set up Man-Thing at the end of the last one. But we also know that when they were filming they're calling it Coven of Chaos now, the Agatha Harkness show, that they filmed a Mephisto episode at the same time.
Interesting. All right.
With Sacha Baron Cohen. So maybe the most likely up next, either that or Man-Thing, but we'll see what happens with the way things are.
But we're definitely going to do some coverage there. I know you were really excited to talk about Werewolf by Night to promote that. Yeah. So we're going to get some coverage in for that as well. We've got
there's some more exciting specials lined up. We'll talk about them too.
Okay, cool. Yeah. And then obviously we have Loki coming down the pipeline. Looks like they bumped Kraven to 2024. I saw a New York Times article about that today. So question mark. And then we have, what was the other one that they're going to drop? Echo. Echo is going to be a binge. Right. Echo. So,
yeah.
So we've got coverage planned out for the rest of the year, roughly. And we're hopefully going to get some Spider-Verse once the Spider-Verse comes onto streaming.
Yay.
We're going to rewatch that and then talk about it in a little bit more in-depth process because
Easter eggs.
Exactly. We'll be able to freeze frame and take pictures with our phones and analyze on a deeper level. So, we've got a lot more coming in the MCU pipeline, so stay tuned. Real quick, let's talk about our upcoming programming schedules. Elysia, what do you have happening with your Wool Shift Dust podcast?
So the Wool episode, the breakdown of the book, will be out in the book club by the time that this drops, I think, unless you're super fast. And then 2 weeks from now, we'll be dropping the next book in the series. We'll be analyzing Shift. And meanwhile, next week on the public feed, Luke and I are going to be giving an introduction to the Dune coverage that we're going to be doing. And of course, we know that one is also being discussed, being moved, but we're just going to assume for now that it's not and just move forward.
I really hope they don't move it. I did also see that there was...
I think it would be not smart for them for a few reasons, because the only reason to move it is they're like, oh, well, we want a big money maker when we don't have people to promote. But this is one that they're going to want to have lined up for the awards. And it also, they've been promoting it so much. And so it would be like really infuriating for the audience. And to be honest, they don't really need the cast to promote this one. It sells itself.
It sells itself.
And it would just really be kind of a depraved move. It would be a clear tactical move to, avoid dealing with strike issues and stuff. It would just be very cynical on their part.
It communicates that they're not even trying now.
They're not being serious about resolving these issues.
Because they've been quoted as saying, we'll just let the strike run until the writers lose their houses, So that's the vibe that they're giving if they move it, because they have literally said that.
Right. Yeah. And it shows that, they're not serious about actually having conversations and working out a deal. They're just being one-sided about it all. So cool. Well, I'm really looking forward to the Dune stuff. And I love the fact that you're talking about the video games and Jodorowsky's Dune and all of the different properties. We're covering Foundation on our main Lorehounds channel. John and I are doing full breakdowns. And I really love the interplay and the space of conversation that exists between Foundation and Dune, because they're both huge seminal sci-fi works. There's some conversation around, did Herbert write some of Dune in reaction to Asimov's Foundation? Where are there parallels and where are there similarities? And so I think it's a fun area of conversation. So I'm psyched that you and Luke are doing that. I'm jealous I can't participate more, but I'm going to be listening. I'm going to be downloading every episode as soon as they make available. So
we should do a crossover Dune Foundation.
100%. Ooh, that's very cool. I like that idea.
Talk about the similarities and
very cool. I think
I'd listen.
Yep, for sure. Very cool. So you've got your Patreon book club. Go check that out. Those are pay per episodes for the book club.
Yep.
And then
patreon.com/WillShiftDust.
Perfect. And then Will Shift Dust Does Dune is your next show on the public feeds. All right. So keep an ear out for those. We have Properly Howard Movie Reviews is going to be starting up their season very soon. They dropped a teaser episode at the end of June, Howard the Duck. Starting on August 14th, we're going to have White Men Can't Jump, a Dune Part 1 movie review with Steve and Anthony. And then they're going to do RoboCop. So those White Men Can't Jump, Dune, and RoboCop are going to be the August offerings for Properly Howard Movie Reviews. If you haven't checked them out yet, definitely do it. Anthony's a academic. Steve's a stand-up comic. They walk into a podcasting studio and have a lot of fun taking down movies. Not taking down, but having fun with movies. And this season's themes are remakes. So these are all the movies they're going to do this round are remakes. For the Lorehounds, we're coming to the end of the month. We should have just dropped an episode on Earthsea, our second part of The Furthest Shore, Part 2. We will have also dropped our most recent episode of Silmarillion Stories, and it's the Flight of the Noldor and Valinor, the Darkening of Valinor, and that is with Marilyn Arpakila, who is our favorite Tolkien scholar. As mentioned, we are covering Foundation in full, looking into August. That is going to carry forward with Foundation. Then we have a two-part Ahsoka retrospective to get ready for Ahsoka once that live-action show starts up. Really looking forward to that. Then we will be staring down the maw of Wheel of Time, so we're going to have Foundation, Ahsoka, and Wheel of Time all overlapping for like a week or two. It's going to be a little crazy.
Man. What a time to be alive.
That's right. Meanwhile, we're still rolling forward on Silmarillion Stories. Earthsea is going to take a break in August. We're going to come back with Book 4, Tehanu, in September. We've got some travel and vacation stuff, so we just said, let's just bump it because we want to be able to really pay attention to that book. So
I need to catch up.
Yes, still a lot going on. So thank you, everyone, for your listens and for your support. Last thing I want to do is thank all of our Patreon subscribers. You all make this all possible. You help pay for the operations and taking care of all our contributors and hosts. As always, we want to shout out to our Lore Master patrons. They're our top tier supporters: Samartian, Cyrus, Mark H., Michael G., Michelle E., David W., Brian P., Nick W., SC, Peter O.H., Bettina W., Adam S., Nancy M., Lavinia T., Duve71, Brian 8063, Frederick H., Sarah L., Gareth C., Eric F., Matthew M., Sarah M., DJ Miwa, Andra B., Kwang Yu, Laura G., and Robert L. Really, our most heartfelt gratitude to you all, and thank you for making our first year of podcasting really a special thing, that we have been able to grow our family and to have the fun covering the shows that we love. So that's it for us for a couple of weeks, MCU folks. We'll be back in middle August with our season wrap up, and we'll have some more MCU news and plans then. Elysia, thank you so much for all that you do. We're so glad to have you here. Jean, thank you as well for bringing us in and out of the comic book world safely. Using our little Jean particle beamer action to transport back and forth.
I got one, but we still need a scroll detector.
That's right. That's right. All right. Awesome. All right. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
The Lorehounds podcast is produced and published by The Lorehounds. You can send questions and feedback and voicemails at thelorehounds.com/contact. Get early and ad-free access to all Lorehounds podcasts at patreon.com/thelorehounds. Any opinions stated are ours personally and do not reflect the opinion of or belong to any employers or other entities.